Hello everyone, my name is Wendy. Today I'm going to be reviewing Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector. This is my first ever video book review, so if I have a good time making this and if everyone likes it, then I will probably do more. But for today, I just thought I would get through this one and just see how it goes. Clarice Lispector was born in the Ukraine in the winter of 1920. Her family fled the area shortly thereafter. They ended up emigrating to Brazil when Clarice was still just a little baby. Her mother died young when Clarice was only 9 years old, and her father died when she was only 19. Clarice went to law school and she started working as a journalist before she even graduated. And shortly thereafter, she was already publishing novels. Near to the Wild Heart was the first book she ever published, and it sort of set the tone for everything that would come after it. If you've ever read any of her books, you know that she really seems to focus on those deep internal emotions that we all have, those really intimate spaces where she seemed to really be searching for some kind of core truth. Agua Viva was published in 1973, and Clarice was kind of insecure about its release, which was really unlike her up until that point in time. I guess she was sort of hesitant to hand it over for publication, and she had a few people look it over first to sort of gauge what they thought of it before she okayed it for publishing. When I was reading Agua Viva, I sort of got this sense that she was anticipating her own death in a way, and when I later read a little bit more about her life, like her mom died very young. At the age she was when she wrote Agua Viva, she was long past the age that her mother was when she died, and she was creeping up really closely to the age her father was when he died. And a few years prior to Agua Viva coming out, there was actually a fire in her home that left her fairly injured. So I think mortality was really on her mind, and specifically her own mortality, when she was writing this book. Maybe that's why it felt so close to her and why she was a little bit insecure about having it published. And then Clarice did pass away the day before her birthday in 1977. So just a few years after she had published Agua Viva. So Agua Viva is kind of a book about nothing, and so that if you're hoping for a plot, you're not really going to find one. If you're hoping for a lot of characters and character development, you're not really going to find that. But what you will find is a collection of thoughts, and those thoughts are about death, about life, sort of a zeroing in from moment to moment on what it means to be, and then subsequently what it means to no longer be. Death. Everybody dies. So the main character, the narrator, is a painter who has decided to forego the paintbrush in favor of the pen. The gender of this narrator, this individual, I don't believe was explicitly stated at any point, or if it was, perhaps I missed it, but I maybe imprinted female energy onto the character, perhaps just because Clarice wrote it. Maybe if it was a male author, I would have done the same, gendering the male. So this narrator is in search of the present, the right now, which is so fleeting. And it's interesting because this narrator, this character, this painter is trying to hold on to this moment of pure present that she's searching for. But by definition, the present moment is constantly moving and constantly changing, and each moment is followed by the next, and so that's not possible. The way the thoughts come out in this is very interesting, and it kind of reminded me of reading Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann, which has a similar sort of style in a sense that the narrator is basically inviting you into their world, and you have a sense of time passing, not necessarily in days or in months or anything like that, but for example, the character will be like, oh, I have to go and do something, and then the next paragraph, okay, I'm back. So you get this sense that you're kind of along for the ride. You are on her desk, you are the paper, and you're kind of hearing everything that she's saying, and she's coming and going. And so you have this sense of time passing, not necessarily in an exact way, but you kind of sense that there are days that have passed in between. So for me, this book felt very intimate, like I was somewhere I shouldn't be, cracking open someone's diary, reading it. But at the same time, I almost felt like Clarice herself was just like peering over my shoulder, like whispering in my ear all of these thoughts. And so I simultaneously sort of felt invited and sneaky about it. Like, you're hearing things you're not supposed to hear in another person's thoughts. That's what's so great about reading. You do get invited into somebody's inner world, and that's part of the joy of it. I feel like I'm always looking for books that seek to touch that dark little center of what it means to be human, and Clarice Lispector gets closer to that for me than any other writer. I've read quite a few of her books now, and I want to read all of them. Each one sort of like is a little bit the same in the sense that they're all very intimate. They're all very internal. It's very interesting to read someone else's thoughts and see yourself in it a little bit. And it's really interesting to read Clarice, and it almost feels like nobody does it like that. Nobody else, at least from what I've read, can do that. It just very much feels so special, and Clarice herself is such a special writer, and we're so lucky that she's been translated into so many languages now. I only speak English, unfortunately, and learning languages is not my strong suit, so I'm so grateful that there are all these books that have been translated of hers into English so that we can enjoy them. So this is the actual book. As you can see, it is very short. I just have my finger in here because I'm going to read you a little paragraph from it that I really enjoyed. When I first read this paragraph, I sort of just sat there on my couch in my library here, and I just stared out the window for a few minutes because I just thought it was so beautiful. So I'm going to read it to you now. This is on page 11 and 12. To remake myself and remake you, I return to my state of garden and shadow, cool reality. I barely exist, and if I exist, it's with delicate caution. Around the shadow is a heat of abundant sweat. I'm alive, but I feel that I have yet to reach my limits. Borders with what? Without borders, the adventure of dangerous freedom. But I take risks. I live taking risks. I'm full of acacias swaying yellow, and I who have barely started my journey, I start it with a sense of tragedy, guessing towards which lost ocean my steps of life are leading. And madly I take control of the recesses of myself. My ravings suffocate me with so much beauty. I am before, I am almost, I am never. And all of this I won when I stopped loving you. I mean, I love that passage so much. And this book is just, it's really just such a wonderful book. I want to read it again. I feel like it's the kind of book that you can read over and over and over again and get something new out of it, depending on which stage of life you're in. I'll probably read that book before I die. But it is interesting to reflect on mortality. It's interesting to understand that we're here impermanently. It's interesting to read the thoughts of someone else who's dealing with something similar with those thoughts of mortality, because I think we all have those, especially as we get older. So yeah, it's a really good book and you should read it. So hopefully this video was good. Hopefully you go out and read this book if you haven't already. If you have read this book, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because I think it's one of those books that I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer as to what it's about, which is why I thought it was simultaneously a good idea and a bad idea to make this my first book review on video, because in a lot of ways it's really difficult to describe this book, and in other ways I feel like you could describe it in any way depending on who you are and what you got out of it, and you're going to be within the ballpark of, you know, what's correct. So if you've read any Clarice Lispector, you'll probably get a lot out of this one. And now I don't know how to end a video. So I'm just gonna dance a little bit. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this, let me know. There are other books I could review. Yeah, I had fun, so I don't know how to end a video, so maybe I'll just go boop. What do people say? I don't know what to do with myself, so